glad to see you all. This is a great crowd, and we've had such a great, every week we get a good crowd, so thank you for supporting Historic Hopewell Foundation. And if you would like to join our foundation, we do have brochures in the back, so welcome all members. Today we have Theresa Gee, and the title of her presentation is Ona Judge, My Freedom Story. Storyteller Theresa Gee is a former radio announcer and Christian talk show host. She travels the country telling stories of notable African American women from history. Among her most memorable characters is Coretta Scott King in her one-woman play, Through the Eyes of Coretta. So welcome, Theresa.
Pure lamb, trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Time is drawing nigh. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Time is growing nigh. Christian journey soon be over. Christian journey soon be over. Christian journey soon be over. Time is growing nigh. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Time is growing nigh. Well, good morning. Good morning. How are you all this morning? Well, I hope you're having a wonderful time today, because I cannot hear myself. Can you all hear me? Yes. You can hear me? And does it sound like I'm coming from those big pretty boxes up in the heavens somewhere? Well, if it turns out that you can't hear me, just, cup your hand over your ear like the old folks used to do, and we'll make some adjustments, all right? My name is Ona. How are you? Well, how are you? I am fine. How are you? All right. I am blessed and prosperous, highly favored, and as they say, as cute as all get out. That's right. I was a first-hand witness to the Revolutionary War. I was there. I could see it with my own eyes, even though I was little. But I had the opportunity to see so much and to meet so many high, important people. And I want to tell you about a few of them today. Is that all right? All right. Hi, Precious. How are you? It is so good to see you. Bless you. So, sometimes I just don't even know where I should start with my journey. But let's start, I suppose, Pastor, where it all began. Let's start with my mama and my papa. Now, let me tell you this. Back in my day, it is quite often that people who were slaves did not always know their parents. Did you know that? Well, guess what? I was very blessed because my mama's name was Betty. And my father's name was Andrew Judge. Now let me tell you a little bit about them. You see, they were fine folks, I reckon. My mama worked for a woman that some of you may have heard of, and her name was Martha Washington. Anybody Ever heard of her? Martha Washington? Let me tell you, she had a husband named George, you see, and George was something else. Mr. Washington took a great deal of pride in calling me Oni. Oni. I have to let you know that is a name that I came to despise over the years. I don't care if it was Mr. Washington himself that gave it to me, but that's okay. That's okay. My mama worked for Martha Washington. She was her seamstress, you see. And my papa, Mr. Andrew Judge, Andrew was a tailor. Now, my mama was a slave, but my papa, he was an indentured servant. Let me tell you what the difference is. Anyone know what the difference is? Well, for a slave, you couldn't work the time off. If you were born a slave, you were a slave, and that's it, you were a slave. However, if you were an indentured servant, you could actually work your time off. My mama and papa worked for the Washingtons, you see. They always had to look beautiful, fine, clean, and pressed everywhere they went because they were people of prestige. So my mama sewed all the ball gowns and all the clothes for that wonderful Miss Martha Washington. My papa, Mr. Andrew Judge, he was Washington's personal tailor, and he was an indentured servant. Mr. Washington met my papa when he was in England, and he paid $45 for my father. $45. But that $45 got my papa here in this country. You see, Washington brought him over here so that he would still be able to tailor suits for Mr. Washington. And I understand you all have something called, help me with this one, Brother Pastor. They got something called, it's those little bitty pieces of paper that people kind of carry around with them, and sometimes they have those pieces of paper and those little things right there, and it's, what is it called? A picture. That's what it is, a picture. So those beautiful clothes that you see Mr. Washington wearing, especially that beautiful silk suit that you have on with the top coat, my father, Mr. Andrew Judge, sewed all of Mr. Washington's clothes. He was his personal tailor. He met him in England, so he just simply brought him back to America with him after having paid $45 for my father. Nobody paid for my mama, Miss Betty, and Miss Betty made as many clothes for Mrs. Washington as Mr. Washington's wardrobe. So that's the difference, you see. For those who were actually slaves, we were not paid for our labor. But those who were indentured servants, they were not only able to work their time off, they actually were also able to earn a small stipend. That's somehow the difference. But I guess sometimes the other difference could also be the color of our skin. You see, I kind of hate to bring it up because I do know that we are in mixed company, and for that I apologize, but something about the color of our skin, the hue of our skin, a lot of times those of us that were darker, we didn't get paid as much as those who were lighter. Slaves didn't get paid at all. So, let's move this story along. I just want to let you know where I came from. My mom and my papa. Now, here is one thing about my parents' relationships. I do not know whether or not my mother and father loved one another. I don't know. I don't know if they just saw each other across a crowded room and just madly fell in love. I don't know if it was a situation of forced, those were the times. So I don't really know what their relationship was. But what I do know is that as an end result of that relationship, I am here. Oh, now, Mr. Washington was a proud man. Mr. Washington loved to look good. Martha Washington had the same habits. Now, let me tell you this, because some of you may know, some of you may not. Did you know that George Washington is known as the father of our country? The father of our country. So what I want to know is, how was Mr. Washington the father of our country when he never had any children of his own? He never had children. Now, some people will say, now wait a minute, there was Daniel, there was Eliza, there were two others. There were 4 children, right? But those 4 children were Martha Washington's 4 children. Mrs. Washington had married Mr. Custis, and 7 years into their marriage, Mr. Custis up and died. I'm just saying, the man up and died, children. So you had this prim and proper lady. She's got all of these children. What in the world is this poor Southern lady to do? And she caught the attention of George Washington himself. So George Washington was actually the step-parent of the children. But let's also remember that 2 of Martha Washington's children had actually passed away. And then there was a day when tragedy struck the family. Miss Eliza, which was George Washington's stepdaughter, by now she's about 17 years old. She was excited about a letter that she had received from one of her beaux. So they're all downstairs in the parlor, having their evening cup of coffee and their wonderful sips of tea. Because of receiving this letter from one of her beaux, she decided that she wanted to bring the letter down and show it off to the family, right? She goes upstairs, but she doesn't come back down. When her sister-in-law, who was married to her brother, when she went upstairs, she found that Miss Eliza was having a seizure. She was prone to seizures, And so what happened was they tried to call a doctor, but the doctor didn't get there in time. Within 2 minutes, Miss Eliza had passed away. Oh, Mr. Washington was indeed devastated that he had just lost his stepdaughter. And of course, Mrs. Washington had lost 2 children earlier. Jackie is the only one that remains. So there was a lot of tragedy and things that happened back then. Quite often in history, you'll see something else that they call, the thing that we were talking about earlier, darling, what's it called? A picture? Yeah, okay, a picture. So there's something, I don't know what it is, but it was something that makes pictures kind of move, Yeah, A camera? Okay, yeah. And it makes them move. It makes pictures move. I think they called it a move-in picture show. Well, children, let me tell you, a lot of times in those move-in picture shows, you see the slaves that are on the plantation. You see them just laughing and dancing and just happy and singing and shouting. And children, that is not the way it was. People danced all right. About 100 years earlier, when they brought slaves over to this country, the slaves had been chained and bound downstairs in the bow or downstairs in the boat. The women were not chained. The men were chained. The reason dancing comes into the picture is because every afternoon they would unclasp the male slaves, and they would bring them up on the deck of the boat, and they would make them dance and sing and shout and praise hallelujah as if they were happy. But they weren't happy because they were going to a land that they knew nothing of. The reason that they were made to dance is simply so they could keep the slaves in shape. I think in today's world, you all call it calisthenics, exercise, something like that. I think I heard about that just a little bit. But that is why they were depicted as happy. We were slaves. We were not that happy. Let me move my story on. I told Jesus it would be all right if he changed my name. I told Jesus it would be all right if he changed my name. I told Jesus it would be all right, be all right, be all right. I told Jesus it would be all right if he changed my name. Changed my name, all right. Indeed, he did. There was a time when, I don't know if you actually remember this, but there was a time when Mr. George Washington became the President of these United States. Did you all know that? Our very own Mr. Washington. Mr. Washington lived in Mount Vernon, of course. And that's where I was, in fact, born. I was born on the plantation of Mount Vernon. But there was a time when Mr. Washington became president that he had to go to the White House in order to lead our country. But the White House wasn't the White House then. This White House was actually located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. That's where it was. And so, Mr. Washington had a lot. Now, a lot doesn't mean many. The lot is the amount that he had. He had a lot of favorite slaves, and so did Miss Martha. My mother, Miss Betty, was one of Martha's favorites. And as I grew, I became one of her favorites as well. The time came when I was about 15 years old that my brother and I were packed up on a wagon and sent up north to Pennsylvania. My mother did not go. But can you imagine the hurt in my mother's heart seeing her babies being packed up and going yet to another land that they know nothing of? There were 8 of us on that journey. There was William Self. William Self was Mr. Jefferson's most trusted slave and assistant. He was so because William Self actually replaced my father, Andrew Judge. 4 years later, after coming to this country, my father had earned enough to buy his own freedom. And because he was an indentured servant, he was able to buy his freedom and leave without my mother and I. So William Self became the personal confidant and the person that stood beside Mr. Washington's side. I can only imagine how my mother had felt seeing her 2 children go to Pennsylvania along with Mr. and Mrs. Washington. Now, they rided the coach in style. We had to ride a buggy standing up with all of their luggage and furniture and everything else piled on the buggy. And when we didn't do that, we simply walked. I was away from my mother for the first time in my life at the age of 15. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child, a long way from home, a long way from home. Now my brother and I are in the booming city of Philadelphia, and I began to notice there was something different. Now, during the time of slavery, slaves in the South were treated much more harshly than those in the North. I don't really know why that is. A slave is a slave. It didn't matter, seemed to me, where we were. But we were treated differently. Well, I am watching people mill around the city. They were walking around, and you're not going to believe this because I didn't believe it myself when I saw. Did you know that black people and white people were walking together? What? Did you know that there were free black people, Negroes, colored folks? Did you know that? I'm from the South. I didn't know. And many of those people of color, many of them were actually free. They didn't have any scars on their backs as witnesses of the turmoil and the treacherous conditions. They were walking around free. Flat, fat, black, and colored is what we were always told. Can you believe it? They were free, and I wanted to know what is the difference. Even in Mr. Jefferson's household. In Mr. Jefferson's household, he had the 8 favored slaves, but he also had indentured servants that worked for him. And the difference was the indentured servants that were working for Mr. Washington, they actually earned a wage. I had to do all this toting water for nothing. Are you serious? But those were the times. That's the way it was back then. It was hard, and I never want anybody to stand before you and look around and say that there wasn't anything at all hard or difficult at all about slavery. It was hard. We were considered property. Property? But those were the times. But then came a time that absolutely, positively changed my life. It just happened to be It just happened to be 1796, if you will. By now I'm about 20 years old. I had noticed the difference and the conditions between the way slaves were treated versus indentured servants. I met a wonderful minister there named Mr. Booker, who began to talk to me about one day being free. And I began to germinate that in my head. So the night of Mr. Washington's 65th birthday, the whole area is getting prepared for the party. Oh, we had polished the best silver. We had brought out the finest goblets. But nobody knew that I wasn't on the roster to work that night. My mother, Miss Betty, was. As I had been trying to formulate my escape, I had packed a bag, a carpet bag, you see. It was actually a little bit larger than this one, but I packed a carpet bag, and I hid it in the hallway under the stairs. And I put some other bundles of stuff around it so that nobody could see it. It is Mr. Washington's 65th birthday, and everybody is so happy and lively and gay, and nobody noticed that this one little slave girl slipped away. You see, all of my travel arrangements had been made by Mr. Booker and all of the people from the Freedmen's Society. And I was told that I would need to walk 2 blocks down to the pier. And I needed to look for a ship called the Nancy. But once I boarded that ship, although my tickets had been paid for, once I boarded that ship, I was not allowed to have any communications with the captain. The reason for that is because of, what do they call it? Plausible deniability. So this way, if anybody had asked the captain about the slave woman that they just captured from being on the ship, he could simply deny that I was there. But that's okay. My job was to get on that boat and be able to get out of town. As they say, get coat and go. And that is exactly what I did. As I'm walking down those 2 blocks, I made sure I kept my head down, and I didn't make eye contact with anybody until I got safely to the pier. And remember this, slaves could not read. They wouldn't let us learn how to read or to write. So I had to casually ask others, where is the ship, the Nancy? And I had to pretend that I was just coming to the Nancy so that I could get a package for my master. They didn't know that I was the package. On the night of Mr. Washington's 65th birthday, I sailed off aboard the Nancy, and I was terrified because now I've already left my brother and my mother back in Pennsylvania. And I didn't know what lay ahead for me. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Life is drawing nigh. Oh, but children, that's where my story takes a turn. I get up north and I meet a beautiful man. Yes, I did. His name was Mr. Stannis. And Mr. Stannis and I, we quickly embarked on a beautiful, loving relationship. And Mr. Stannis was a free man of color. Can you imagine that? And not only that, my beloved Jack Stannis, he was not only a free man of color, he was also a sea merchant. So you would kind of often find him away at sea somewhere, leaving myself unprotected. Oh, but you know how things happen. All of a sudden, I am with child. We must have been having some good times when he wasn't all way at sea. Because there were 2 more babies that at some point followed.
What happened?
You know, I've been asking myself that all these years. It was quite an embarrassment to Mr. Washington and to Martha Washington that one of his slaves had escaped. That could cause quite a scandal, you see. The father of our country couldn't keep his own slaves under control and keep them all together. One actually had the gall to escape. Say it ain't so. It was embarrassing for them. They found ways to try to get me back, as if after escaping slavery I would actually go back. But this is what they did. One of the first things they did, they took out an ad in the paper. They did. I loved it so much I had it blown up. Absconded from the household of the President of the United States, Ona Judge. Couldn't even get my name right in print. Ona Judge, a light mulatto girl with much freckles and very black eyes and poofy hair. That's what they called an afro back then. She has many changes of good clothes. Yes, but they're trying to get me back, you see. Check this out. I love this part. $10 will be paid. Baby, they paid $45 for my father and I'm only worth 10? What? But look at this. $10 will be paid to any who will bring her home. Oh, they want me to come home to Mount Vernon in Virginia. On Mount Vernon, Mr. Washington had over 200 slaves. There were slave quarters there. In one of the slave quarters, which was called the family house, in that slave quarters, there were 67 slaves in a 2-room building. There was another slave quarters on Mount Vernon. I don't know if it's still standing today, but it was a 2-story building, 4 rooms, and over 150 slaves were crowded in that 4-room building. And they want me to come back home. The devil is a liar. I'm just here to let you know. Last thing on my mind. But they sent the overseer looking for me, Brother Pastor. They sent an overseer, in addition to putting ads in the paper. By the way, $10 is worth about $200 today. So if they had captured me, they would have been coming into some money. It also says they would give them a higher price if I were brought home in good condition. Are you kidding me? One day, the overseer came looking for me. When he got there, I was there, admittedly, I was there. He knocked on the door. I opened the door, and standing beside me, or right in front of me, was Mr. Bassett. Mr. Bassett and I had grown up together. I a slave, he a free white boy. But now he's the overseer of the plantation. He asked, no, he told me that I needed to come home. By now, my baby is about 14 months old. So I made Mr. Bassett a promise. I told Mr. Bassett, if you will give me some time to put my things together and bundle up my baby and pack a bag, I'll go back to Virginia with you. Mr. Bassett said, no worries, I'll be back at 4 o'clock. In the meantime, Mr. Bassett went out and gathered his friends and had them hiding in the woods. That way, if I didn't come back willingly, they would force me to get on the boat. Mr. Bassett told me he was going to come back at 4 o'clock. So at 12 noon, I called an Uber. There was a man who drove a buggy, you see. Today you would call it a taxi. Back then it was just a horse and carriage baby that was as good as you were going to get. The buggy driver, my Uber driver, came to get us, snuck us out of the house, put me and my baby in the floorboards of the wagon. I'm holding my baby to my chest, hoping that she wouldn't cry, and if she cried, maybe she wouldn't make too much noise. He bundled on top of me sacks of cotton and tobacco, making sure that I was deeply hidden. He took me to an area about 4 towns over where my husband and I were legally married. You see, slaves back then were not able to legally marry. But I was able to marry my Jack because of the fact he was a free man of color. He was free, but I was still a slave. So I had to look over my shoulder all of my life. After the Uber driver got me back to where I had to go, I'm just a few towns over, you see. And we're hoping somehow to dispatch word to my husband who was at sea to let him know when he came back into port where he would find me. That afternoon, promptly at 4 o'clock, I'm told, Mr. Bassett came and knocked on the door. Oni, it's time to go. Now there's that name Oni again. I've told you I don't like that name. Oni, it's time to go. Surely you've had enough time to pack up you and your baby by now, surely. Mr. Bassett continued to knock on the door. Then he got frustrated, so he kicked the door in, and all the men ran out of the woods and rushed the house. And when they got into the house, they found that house empty because I had called my Uber driver and we had left hours ago. Isn't God good? Give him some praise. There were several times in those days that they would send an overseer to try to capture me and get me back home. But I would not return. God blessed me so that he could keep me invisible every single time. That's why my story is a story of victory. It's because God hid me. It was because God knew where I was going to be in history. He knew the importance of somebody being able to escape from the President of the United States itself. God knew my destiny, my plans I have made for you. He tells us that in Jeremiah. God knew that that was going to be my destiny. My husband and I, we were blessed. We had 3 beautiful children. All of my children made it to adulthood somewhere as early adults. My 2 baby girls passed away. And my son William had followed in his father's footsteps. He became a seaman. And believe it or not, my son sailed off into the pages of history, and we never heard from him again. As for Mr. Washington loved to ride horses. He had a favorite horse, a steed that he enjoyed riding. So one day, Mr. Washington went out and he was riding along the plantation of Mount Vernon. He decided to inspect his fields, and as this was happening, a gentle rain began to fall. He didn't turn around and come back home. He just continued on with his ride. By the time afternoon had bled into evening, Mr. Washington decided to come back home. By the time he made it home, dinner was being served. Instead of going upstairs and changing into fresh, dry clothes, Mr. Washington remained in the clothes that he had on. It wasn't long after that Mr. Washington fell ill. Today, we would assume that illness may have been pneumonia. He fell ill, and as he lay on his deathbed dying, he asked Martha to go and bring him his will. He said, "Now, baby, there are 2 wills in that drawer. I want you to bring me both wills. And when you get in here, I want you to tear the first one up. Don't read it. Don't even think about it. Just tear it up, burn it, and let the pages go away to history." Martha Washington, at General Washington or President Washington's side, she opened the second will. And what she read there was exciting, I'm sure, to her in one way, but threatening to her in another way. In December of 1799, George Washington passed away to glory, or somewhere. What Mrs. Washington had read in that will is that not upon George Washington's death, but upon the death of Martha Washington, upon their death, all 200 plus of the slaves on his plantation were to be set free. Hallelujah. Martha Washington indeed became a little paranoid reading that. She was afraid that if any slave found out that they would be freed not upon Washington's death, but upon Martha's death, she was afraid that the slaves would raise up in a revolt against her and thus end her life. So she was in fear of that very thing. So what did she do? She freed her slaves 2 years prematurely. Look at God. She's like, look, I ain't waiting till I die to free these people, because if they find out about it, they may in fact kill me or plot to end my life. Why is that so victorious? It's victorious because when you put your hands in God's hands, He knows what your destiny is. He knows that the way in front of you and the path has been made straight. He knows where you're going to, He knows your ending as well as your beginning. Martha Washington died 2 years after George Washington died. But after Washington passed away, she freed the slaves. I guess she didn't remember that slaves can't read. I told Jesus it would be all right if He changed my name. I told Jesus it would be all right if He changed my name. I told Jesus it would be all right, be all right, be all right. I told Jesus it would be all right if He changed my name. And now I need your help with something. I want you all to join me in one of those good old-fashioned church songs that we always sing, Brother Pastor. I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, well down. I said down. I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside and study war no more. Well, I ain't gonna study war no more. 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 I'm gonna put on a long white robe down by the riverside, well down. I said down. I'm gonna put on a long white robe down by the riverside and study war no more. Well, I ain't gonna war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. And that's my story, and I'm sticking with it. So in our closing couple of moments that we have, I want to know if any of you have any questions. And if you do have questions, please make them easy. Any questions? Yes, that's right. Any questions? Yes.
So after the slaves that were set free, couldn't read, did they hire them back on the plantation, or just give them food and
It depended on where they were. Because in some cases, the slaves remained on the plantation. In Richmond, Virginia, there was Elizabeth Van Loo, and she had gone to her mother and asked for the freedom on behalf of the slaves that were on their plantation. They freed them, and they gave them a living wage. But what is interesting is oftentimes slaves would be free, but then there was no place to go. So a lot of slaves actually migrated up north, but I mean, they would have these huge encampments of people there. So they had societies that would get together so that they could try to employ them, they could feed them, and they would have places for them to be able to experience shelter. So a lot of times the slaves were sometimes freed, but they may have remained on the plantation because they didn't know where else to go. So if the Lord had softened the heart of the plantation owner, it's possible that they may have been allowed to stay there, and in many cases they may, but not exclusively, they may have been able to have earned a wage. Anybody else?
How long after they were freed before you found out? I mean, because I'm sure it took a while for word to get to you and everything that all the 200 got freed.
Well,
You know, when will you finally tell us about this?
my story is in the early 1700s. George Washington died, of course, in 1799. Slavery did not end until January of 1863. It was 2.5 years later when the slaves in Texas found out they were free, and that was June 19th of 1865. So freedom actually did not happen for my parents, or for my mother rather. My father was indentured, so he bought his own way to freedom. But freedom did not happen for the slaves during Washington's time. He did free them again upon Martha's death, but not upon his death. So that way she would be able to keep the slaves, and they would be able to keep her in the condition in which she had become accustomed, you know, for much longer. But she was afraid. She freed them, she just didn't tell them they were free. And of course, when I left and went up north, I never came back home. Because it was dangerous for me to come back home. You know, I didn't want to be recaptured, and you know, and of course by now I've got 3 children in tow, so I never came back to Virginia after being free. But this is an artist rendering of Ona Judge, or Ona Judge. You can see Mount Vernon in the background. But the thing that strikes me about this picture so much is, doesn't she just look tired? She looks so tired in this picture. And I can only imagine that, you know, when you were living and working in that condition, I can only imagine that that's the way it was, that you were often tired. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Did Washington, they owned 200 slaves?
Over 200 slaves, yes.
Did he own them because he had married his wife?
Yes, as a matter of fact, that's a good point. Betty and the slaves that Mr. Custis owned, and I'm not sure how many there were, but those were, Betty belonged to Mr. Custis. And then when he died, they came under the ownership of Martha. But the moment that Martha the moment that Martha married, then they became the property of Mr. Washington, but of course, you know, joint property, I guess you could say. But yes, so many of the slaves that Washington had, he had as a result of Martha's first husband, Mr. Custis.
I was wondering if that was why his will said, after my and her death.
Yes.
Not because he
Right.
didn't.
That's a good point. But yes, that is a very good point. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Did you ever learn to read?
No, ma'am. I never learned to read.
Your children?
My children, eventually, they struggled with it, but they tried. The sad part about the time is, depending on who you were socializing with, there might not be anybody that could teach you to read. You know, coming up 1 month from now, August the 15th, I will play Phyllis Wheatley at Hanover Courthouse. If you're planning to come, get there early, because it fills up very early. But there, I'll be telling the story of Phyllis Wheatley. Phyllis Wheatley, when she came here, she was brought here on a ship, and when she got here, she knew nothing about the American language or anything, but within 16 months, she had mastered English and also studied Latin and Greek. Phyllis Wheatley was the first published poet that was a slave. And I have to admit, I enjoy doing her story, but I find that her poetry is actually very complicated and over my head sometimes. So she was a brilliant woman, and she was basically put on an exhibition tour. Mrs. Wheatley, Susanna Wheatley, realized that this young lady was extremely smart. But everybody back then during those times, they didn't think, because this was also during the Revolutionary War, and she also witnessed the Boston Tea Party. So it was right in the thick of all of that. But it was thought that people who were slaves could not learn, that they couldn't teach us how to read or to write. And so when you have this woman, and not only is she reading and writing within 16 months, and she is publishing a book, can you imagine the first black woman, at least black woman who was a slave, to actually publish a book? So it'll be awesome to be able to bring her story to life. I'm looking forward to that. Thank you so much. I know that the time has come and gone, so thank you. I appreciate it. Give Miss Alades a round of applause.
No, the applause goes to you.
You're sweet. Thank you. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. What a blessing. Thank
You
you.
were a blessing to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wasn't that fascinating?
Thank you.